Thank you for coming, everyone, today in this brave new world, and nice to see you all and to be here with you. Some better news than last time I did a media conference. As you can see, we're doing things a little differently today, and this is the world we are now in. Today, I want to announce that our AFL competition is returning. From Monday, all clubs will return to training, and all AFL clubs will resume full contact training a week later on May 25. Our 2020 AFL Premiership season will resume on Thursday, June 11. All players and returning football department staff are being tested for COVID-19 prior to returning to the club, and that testing is continuing today. All players are undergoing education sessions on the protocols they will need to follow, including rigorous ongoing screening and regular testing throughout both the training and return to play period. This will also apply for umpires and key AFL matchday staff once the season resumes. Strict protocols will be in place to protect players, officials, staff and the wider community. I want to say today is a significant step in getting footy back for everyone. Our fans, our clubs, players, coaches, officials and staff, our broadcast and our corporate partners and all who love the game. We know as this situation continues to evolve, we have to remain agile and flexible to be able to adapt where necessary. We need to ensure we continue to prioritise the health and welfare of everyone. Importantly, we must not place any burden on the public health system. We have developed our model as the best option for returning to play, and we've done so following extensive consultation, including with the federal, state and territory governments and chief health officers. I want to thank the Prime Minister, the various ministers, state premiers and chief ministers and all the chief health officers for their ongoing support and guidance. I particularly thank federally Ministers Colbeck and Hunt, and more locally I want to call out, I've been leaning and pestering and driving Brett Sutton mad, Martin Pakula and the Premier of this state, Dan Andrews, and I thank them for their support. Throughout this evolving pandemic, we've anchored every decision in line with the advice of the respective government and relevant medical authorities. Our industry understands the opportunity we have been given. We also fully understand and accept our responsibility to our football family and to the wider community. In order to maintain flexibility, the AFL released the remaining 144 games plus finals in blocks of up to 4 to 6 weeks. The first block of games, including the first weekend of matches, will be released over the next 10 days. Games in the early part of the season will be scheduled at AFL venues in states that have approved full contact training and matches. All teams will be based out of their home state with the exception of the Western Australian teams, West Coast and Fremantle, and South Australian teams, the Adelaide Crows and Port Adelaide. West Coast Eagles and Fremantle will complete the pre-season training block at their home bases before relocating interstate ahead of their first scheduled match. Current restrictions in South Australia will mean that Adelaide and Port Adelaide will need to relocate interstate before May 25, when full contact training will begin for all 18 clubs. All 4 teams will relocate to the Gold Coast, a move made possible with the support of Queensland Premier Palaszczuk, Tourism Minister Kate Jones, the Gold Coast City Council and Mayor Tom Tate. They will be based on the Gold Coast for an initial period of at least 4 weeks, and the AFL will continue to remain responsive with fixturing so it can respond to any changes to restrictions in either state. Players will be able to host family members at any stage during the time away from home, which will be funded by the AFL. The AFL has agreed with the players will continue to review the arrangements in consultation with the AFLPA, clubs and the Western Australian and South Australian governments. We know we're going to need to retain maximum flexibility with the fixture to allow for home games in each state should circumstances change. I feel confident that how we start is not how we will finish. The AFL will implement protocols over and above the government restrictions to protect the health and safety of every member of our industry and the wider community. These have been developed with the advice of the federal, state and territory governments, along with the relevant chief health officers, as well as the AFL's own medical team, and with consultation with players, coaches and clubs. We have had resilience measures in place over the last 8 weeks, and the protocols cover the protection of players, officials and staff across training, travel and matches, as well as the restrictions in place when away from their club bases. We will continue to consult closely on the protocols and make the relevant updates when required. This is an exciting day for our clubs and for our supporters. I want to thank our supporters for their patience. The return of footy doesn't mean the work is complete. We must continue to follow the advice of the government and medical authorities and continue to play our role in helping flatten the curve. And we encourage everyone to download the COVID Safe app on your phone. Lastly, I want to thank all the frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses and everyone across our health system. From everyone in the AFL and from every level of the game, from our 18 AFL clubs down to community football and our NAB AFL Oz kickers. We say thank you to all the healthcare professionals and to everyone who's working to keep us safe. Questions? I think the challenge is clearly managing the responsibilities to the community with the protocols available in each state and to marry them together. And I want to thank all of our elected leaders and their health representatives for the collegiate way they've gone in navigating that and allowing us to return to the field.
Helping or assisting with the cost post
The Queensland government have been very helpful, Tom, in facilitating the hub up there. I couldn't quite hear the question, but.
Sorry, with the teams based on the Gold Coast, so the families can fly in whenever they like, basically.
That's not what I said, Tony.
Okay, sorry.
I said that the families can go to join the players. They'll be under the same protocols and under a strict set of protocols that have been worked through with the Queensland government.
Sorry, I thought you were saying they can fly in and fly out.
So once in the hub, you're in the hub.
The detail will be played out, but the point about is, I think there's been discussion about players being on their own or are they able to bring partners and families. We've facilitated that the players can bring families. They'll be worked through the clubs and then ultimately they'll be governed by the same protocols that have been established with the Queensland government.
And do those families need to be tested before they go up to the hub?
The whole screening process will play out in the same way.
Will they play each other up there, Gil, to kick things off with the 6-5?
We'll start with 4 rounds, Mark. It's been difficult to get a fixture up because of the uncertainty of the way the model will work, and it's changed, as you know, this week. So that'll be finalised in the coming week, but I think the most likely scenario is those teams will play each other in the first 4 rounds.
Gil, it sounds like the players have been very cooperative. You mentioned they'll have a higher standard than the community at the moment. What are sort of practical examples of things they won't be able to do initially, for example, with socialising or visitors or fishing or golf or things like that?
I think examples, Tom, that each household will be assessed for risk. There'll be restrictions on visitors to households. So there's a full suite of those, and it's going to require, discipline and resilience from all our players and all our football staff, and that's our commitment to the community and to the government that we. We've got a set of protocols that will be adhered to, and coupled with those protocols, with the processes and with increased testing, it's our commitment to government and community to keep everyone safe.
COVID tests per week during the training phase and then once you get into matches?
So every player will be tested twice a week, and as you know, they've been screened, they've been finalised in the last days. And they'll be tested twice a week, every week of training, and then every week of the playing season.
Gil, have you determined the finals series yet? Have you determined the way the finals will look?
The finals, broadly, Damo, will be a normal final series of 4 weeks.
There's a lot of moving parts, obviously, that go into this, but do you have an educated estimation on how long the WA and SA teams might be in the Gold Coast hub?
No, and we've been really clear all along. We will play by the rules and work with exactly the rules of the time in the relevant state and territory. So things changing all of the time. We've seen that in the last week, whether decisions from the Andrews government or the New South Wales government have been out early in the week, and so we'll just have to see how it evolves. I know the borders are very important in those states, but I think the answer will ultimately be about infection rates across the country, and I know everyone in Australia at the moment is doing their bit.
When will the grand final?
I don't have any more for you, Rob, other than at the MCG, presumably, but there's a lot of variability because clearly there's other tenants, there's uncertainty about our dates, and so we'll have to be flexible on that. The default position is the MCG until things change.
When?
Oh, when? Well, if you take a sort of linear view through our fixture, first thing I'd say is that we are planning on roughly maintaining the fixture in its current format, playing weekly games in the structure we've always known. We'll stay flexible and agile, to grab 2 words on that. If we need to compress the season, we have the ability with our players and our clubs later on. But if you take a linear view through it, the grand final plays out in sort of mid to late October.
Gil, does the arrangement?
Clearly, if it goes later than that, Tony, then this venue is an option.
Gil, does the arrangement with the state government here in Victoria mean that it would be at Marvel or the MCG in preference to, say, a state that offered the potential access to crowd?
I think, Tom, there's a lot to work through all that out. We've got a commitment to play the grand final in this state, and at the moment we haven't thought past that.
What about the interchange bench, Gil? Can we have 6 or stay at 4?
Hock's finalising that through in the coming days. I know he's been talking to the coaches in the footy department about that, and I haven't heard it's expanded, but I haven't heard it. I haven't got a final answer on that for you.
What about things like drug testing? Obviously, we're trying to reduce the amount of contact that players have with people outside. Will that process stay the same, or need to be adjusted a little bit?
Dorovich are running all the testing. I don't have an answer for you on about the drug testing policy. Clearly, it'll be maintained, but in what form or if it looks different, I don't know. At the moment, I haven't been advised that it's any different.
What happens if one player tests positive in the group? How do you separate them, and how does footy go on?
There's a series of hypotheticals around that, Steve, about when and in what form and how it's transpired. What we do know now is that we have a whole series of processes and resilience measures in place at the club, whether that's how the training bases are clean, about the players training in groups of maximum of 8 other than one authorised session a week. We have a daily screening by the doctors of every single player on the list. We have weekly testing bi-weekly testing of every player at least 24 hours before the contact sessions, and we'll have the results back before they're allowed to do contact sessions or play games. So, and there are a whole series of other measures. All of those will then determine if there's an infection, who's had close contact and what actually plays out after that.
So what about the Melbourne-based players? What are the protocols surrounding the Melbourne-based players? Are they essentially told home training venue?
In a broader sense, Tony, but it's not as binary as that. They're allowed to get food and drink and others. So there's a set of protocols that go above the current restrictions in Victoria that are consistent for all players nationally. They've been signed off by the Players Association, and it's going to require a level of discipline from the playing group. But they've signed up for that because they're committed to getting our industry back on track, and they want to play.
Obviously, there's a very different footy economy this year. That will obviously mean a reduced salary cap, and you'll have to negotiate that at some stage, not only with the players but with your TV partners. Are you down the track on that?
On which part? On the which negotiation?
Well, the negotiation with your television partners, which are your most important partner.
I think the broad question is that there will be, we've sort of gone through 3 phases. We had our first month was about recutting all of our deals and survival. We've gone through a phase now of whatever it's been, 6 weeks since then, or roughly, where we've worked with our players, our clubs, governments, doctors and others. Now we've got a return to play plan, and which will kick off on Monday at training. The next piece clearly, Rob, is what does 2021 look like, and 22 and 23 for elite and for community and for football, and what we do in every regard. We have a plan at its macro level that went to the Commission on Monday. In parallel, that will mean clearly having discussions and sorting out our arrangements with broadcasters, players, clubs, soft caps, all of that, and that's going to play out over the coming weeks.
Gil, just in terms of the impact for players, do their reduced wages...
You're very much directly behind that light.
Am I?
Yeah.
Sorry, Gil.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the...
Want to see your face.
Oh, thanks. Just in terms of the arrangements for players, do they kick back up into the higher pay category now that you negotiated in terms of the changes? Like, is their bottom line reduction now ended in terms of their players' pay?
Yes. Simple answer, yes.
Gil, how are talks going with the venues in terms of cricket when you get access to the MCG, SCG and possibly Gabba for
I think the question's about access to venues and with other sports. What I've committed to, what I've said publicly and I believe fundamentally is that we're in a sporting town here, in every city in this country we're a sporting country, and we'll work with all the sports to make this work. We have flexibility in our fixture. So if it plays out that we're coming in, there's a T20 World Cup or the racing, we'll work around with them and we'll get an outcome that works for sports fans, for other sports, for everyone.
Do you feel for the fringe
having
players
games around at both venues in Sydney and Brisbane, or Queensland rather?
I think the question is in Queensland, they'll be playing at both venues. And in Sydney, yes.
Just with the VFL scenario and trying to claim a spot, do you feel for those fringe players that perhaps be running around in scratch matches, and it's not ideal, obviously, from the AFL perspective?
I think that will play out how the protocols work, but they'll be screened and tested for contact training, and I imagine that they'll be trying to get the work into them, Steve-O, in that period, because they won't be playing games on weekends. I'll dive in here. I don't know if they've been worked through with the Players Association, so there will be on Monday the protocols that the players and officials and the clubs will be abiding by were enshrined in the AFL rules, so a breach is now a breach of the AFL rules, first point. Secondly, then, in terms of some guidelines, they are in terms of to help players and officials. They've been negotiated through the Players Associations, particularly with respect to the players. They'll be out in the coming days, and they will be, graded. And I can say, in the drafts I've seen, there's intentional, reckless, and careless, and there'll be examples and specific ones with guide sanctions. So, we're going to be really tough on that. Now it's been established that is part of the protocols, are part of the rules, and we'll be as transparent as we can about the accountability to those.
So, Gil, before Mother's Day in Victoria, or before Tuesday night, you couldn't, I think, for example, get a visit from your family. Could players outside the hub, for example in Victoria or New South Wales, get visits from their family under the initial COVID protocols you guys have proposed?
I got a bit confused in all that time, but there will be a set of protocols that govern how people each player can work outside, obviously at training and outside training, and who can be allowed in the house and who they can live with and how that works.
Could their family visit them in Victoria?
Going forward?
Yes.
Every household will be assessed as to risk.
Did you ever doubt that you'd make it back?
Clearly, if you look, I think that someone told me it's 54 days ago or something like that. I think then you must have had doubts. I think, I can only congratulate the response from our governments, the advice they're getting, and then the response of the community that puts us in a position that we are today. I would say, as people are trying to wrap me up, I'd say this, is that I want to thank all of the football industry for their cooperation to get us to this point. The players, the clubs, every aspect. I want to thank my team, and I want to thank the support of the health authorities and the governments to allow us and give us the responsibility to go forward and get football started. And we take it seriously. We've got a set of protocols that have been worked through, and we will be accountable to them.
How much emotional toll has it taken on people like yourself and the clubs and the players as well? The emotional toll is probably, you don't see that at the moment.
There's a lot of people, Glenn, as you know, have been doing it very tough. I think those of us lucky enough to be in jobs or given the thing have been, obviously a lot of people have been working very hard. There's a lot of people in this industry and in the wider community stood down or have lost their jobs, and those are the ones that are doing it really hard. And I hope that as we take steps to get our game back on track, they are not going to be linear. We're going to have lumps and bumps through this. We'll work through this, but I hope that we for some people who are doing it tough, the footy is a bit of something to look forward to.
Jay tells me that's the last one. A good one. So, can you just elaborate on? You said every household will be assessed as to its risk. So does that mean every player's house will be assessed by a compliance officer, if you like?
Yeah, yes, simply.
Yeah.
The environment they're living in, and there'll be a risk assessment of every household.
And will there be a list of who can visit that house and like how?
Yeah, but broadly visitation won't be allowed, but it's based on the risk assessment.